Okay, so I'd like to introduce Jim F. to share his experience, strength, and hope. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Bridget. I'm Jim. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm grateful for another day in the bonus round. Thank you, Bob, for your service. And let's see. I grew up in a home where booze was ubiquitous. There were cocktail carts. There were glasses on that cart, an ice bucket, booze. There were booze in cabinets, wine in drawers. I mean, there was booze everywhere. And every single person in my family drank. And we had our share of alcoholics. My dad told me once that my grandfather was an alcoholic, but he just quit drinking one day. And I can remember that far back, him having a cocktail in his hand and then not. Uh, I don't know if his mom was an alcoholic or not, but he reported that she certainly had a problem with prescription pills. My mom's dad died, direct result of alcoholism in the early 50s. And I had an uncle, my mom's brother, that committed suicide, direct result of alcoholism. So it runs in our family. It's not surprising that I got it. Neither of my parents are alcoholics, and my brother, younger brother and sister are not alcoholics. So I got uh, graced with the genes, I guess. Anyway, I was obsessed with alcohol long before I had my first drink because it was everywhere in our home. Can remember going to intermediate school, and the young boys would hang around the bathroom on Monday mornings and brag about how much they drank on the weekend. And, occasionally a guy would show up with a cast on his arm or something, and everybody would think he was really cool because he got drunk and fell down and broke his arm. And the cast was, evidence that, I don't know, that he was cool and or a drinker or something. And I envied that. I idolized that. And I thought, I want to be like that kid. I want to be like my parents and aunts and uncles and grandparents. And I want to drink too. And finally, uh, right around my 15th birthday, I got invited to a beer party and went. And I started drinking beer. And about a third of the way through that second beer, the magic happened. I got this wave of euphoria. And my first thought was, no wonder people drink, and why didn't they tell me about this? Like they all knew the secret, and I had yet to discover it. I didn't know anything about alcoholism, didn't know anything about addiction, didn't know anything about euphoria. I simply didn't know. I was caught off guard, like some of us are, and I fell in love with booze from the first drink. Anyway, I did not get drunk the first time I drank. I didn't fall over. I didn't pass out. I didn't throw up. I didn't get arrested. And I didn't wake up with a hangover. I just had a very pleasant time. I can't tell you how much more I drank that night. Maybe the rest of that second beer. I don't know. I just had a wonderful time. Now, a lot of people say they drink because they feel like they fit in, or the hole in their stomach or gut or heart closed, or they felt whole. I did experience some of that, but I was a pretty social kid, so I really didn't feel like I finally fit in, although I certainly did, in that group of peers that I had. Um, but it just was a lot of fun. And I remember waking up the next morning and telling my friend, "Oh, wow, I had a lot of fun. When can we do that again?" And he said, "Well, we only drink on the weekends." And I thought, well, that fits the model that my parents, have, and their friends and relatives and stuff. So I guess you just drink on the weekends. So throughout high school, I can't ever remember getting plastered or shit faced or anything like that. I just had a wonderful time with booze. And and then I went off to college. A funny story about that. My dad said to me, "What are you going to do with your life?" I was a junior, I think, in high school. And I said, "I don't know." He says, "You want to go to college?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "Well, if you go to college, I'll pay your tuition and your car payment." So I thought, car payment? Not, it had nothing to do, no idea about college or going to college or anything like that, but car payment was appealing to me. So I asked my buddy Mike what he was doing. He says, "Well, I'm going to Gonzaga University up in Spokane, Washington." And I said, "Okay, where's Spokane?" I mean, I had no idea. I was so naive. And so he, kind of walked me through the process, and I got the application form, and it said I had to write an essay, to get admitted. So I said to this buddy of mine again, "Did you write an essay to get accepted?" He says, "Yeah, of course I did." He says, "Can I have a copy of your essay?" He says, "Yeah, but don't copy it." And I said, "Oh, don't worry, I wouldn't do anything like that." So I got his essay. All I did was change the name and mail it in, and I got accepted to Gonzaga University. And so I'm there 3 days, and I said to my buddy Mike again, I said, "Mike, do you realize they have a church right on campus?" And he looked at me like I was from Mars. I had no idea I'd signed up at a Jesuit university. So that just kind of speaks to my naivety. Um, uh, there's so anyway, got to Gonzaga and started drinking a little bit. Friday and Saturday nights, and I didn't do so well academically my freshman year. In fact, when I left there to go home after my freshman year, the letter beat me home, and I was on secondary extended academic probation. I had no idea. I think my GPA was a 1.7 or something, and my dad went ballistic and said, "I'm not going to pay your tuition." And I was more concerned, remember, about the car payment. "Not going to pay your tuition if you can't get any grades." Uh, so I went back to Gonzaga and I backed off on the drinking, and I started hanging around a different crowd, a more academically orientated crowd, and got my grades up, and I made the honor roll my both semesters my sophomore year, and that got the pressure off. And so then my junior year, I could go back to drinking. So anyway, it's about somewhere around my 21st birthday, which was my junior year there at undergrad. I crossed that invisible line. If there is a line that we cross from normal drinking or fun drinking to addictive drinking, I think I crossed it then. Because looking back, I can see that my friends started to change. I started drinking more frequently, and when I did drink, I drank more, and I started lying about my drinking. I started hiding it. Um, I couldn't see it then. I couldn't see it happening. I couldn't see the change, but some of the people around me did. My girlfriend dumped me, and that sort of stuff. So anyway, I left Gonzaga University. I applied for law school and dental school after I got out of Gonzaga, and I didn't get accepted to either. So I went to work. I took the GRE and went to work on my master's in molecular biology at San Jose State. And while I was there, I drank quite a bit, heavily. I met a woman in my first class, a biology class, zoology, I think. I don't remember. And she was cute, and I asked her for lunch. And the next night we had dinner, and we were off and running. There's an old saying, Alan, on the holes in her head fit the horns in mine. And we lived together for 2 years, and I finally got accepted. I kept applying to law school and dental school, and kept taking the LSAT. I scored poorly on the LSAT. In fact, I've taken the LSAT no less than 7 times over the years, and it finally dawned on me that the LSAT is an aptitude test, and evidently I don't have the aptitude to score well on that test. So I got accepted into dental school. I got married December of '79 while I was a freshman or first year student at Georgetown University. And right before I got married, minutes before, my future father-in-law told my future wife, sitting in the back of that church, that he said to her, "Don't marry this man. He's a drunk. It's just going to cause problems, and you're going to be sorry you ever met him and married him. And we can walk out of this church right now. We can walk away from the reception, and you'll be better for it." And she said, "No, Dad, I love him, and I'm going to marry him, and he's not a drunk." So uh, his his foreboding, his warning was accurate. And I don't know that she regretted it or anything like that, but we did get married, and it turned out I was a drunk. So we'd been married a couple years. She got pregnant, and right before my son was born, I got a DUI in March of '82. And to mitigate the DUI, I signed up for a outpatient alcohol treatment program in Arlington County, Virginia, and that was to get my DUI reduced to a wet reckless. And I entered this program with group counseling, education, and stuff. And their science part of their program was woefully inadequate, and I kept complaining about it. And I finally, they finally told me I could teach some of the classes there, and I did get them up to speed with some of the neurobiology and neurochemistry and neurophysiology. In fact, I did it to the extent where I actually wrote a paper on this stuff, neurotransmitters and stuff, and it got published in an obscure journal. So I am a published researcher. I got that benefit out of being upset by the Arlington County alcohol treatment program. Anyway, part of that deal was to send me off to 3 AA meetings, and so I had to, comply to finish the course, and I ended up going to my first meeting at the Foxhall Group in Washington, D.C., in Georgetown. And it was in the basement of the church that Jimmy and Rosalind Carter used to go to when he was president. So I walked into that room, and there were a bunch of people I recognized instantly from TV. There were congressmen, senators, lobbyists, attorneys, newscasters. It was a who's who of Washington, D.C., stuck in the basement of a church in Georgetown. And I thought, well, no wonder they sent me here with, all these highfalutin people and stuff. And within a few seconds, I recognized, after the meeting started, I recognized that I was not in an AA meeting. I was in a religious reindoctrination program. And I was stunned. I was shocked. All the prayers, all the God stuff. And I thought, oh man, I can't do this. But the people were so remarkable and so warm and so honest. I remember some of these people telling their stories during the meeting, and I kept thinking, oh my God, he's not going to say that, is he? Oh, he just said that, and I thought, I just couldn't believe how honest these people were. And I wasn't sure if they were being honest or if they were just telling stories. But I walked out of that meeting and I thought, I don't know if I want to come back, but the people were so compelling. So I went back to that meeting a couple of more times, and as I was leaving the meeting the third time, the muggers got me, the people with the pamphlets and the books and all that stuff, and they were trying to shove their religion down my throat. And so I took the books and the pamphlet. I got the big book. They signed it, that kind of thing. And so I went home and read it, and I couldn't figure out what the hell the first 7 chapters or 11 chapters or whatever the hell it is were trying to tell me. It just didn't make any sense. However, the stories in the back were compelling. I saw that people had gotten themselves into trouble with alcohol and gotten themselves out. And that meeting echoed that sentiment, that there were people in the AA meeting who had years of sobriety. When those first couple of meetings, when people would raise their hand and say, I have 30, 60, 90 days, I would think, wow, how did they do that? And then somebody would get up and take a 20-year chip, and I thought, oh, that poor bastard. He's been sober for 20 years, So I had some of the things there backwards. Anyway, I started attending meetings regularly about mid-November of 1982, and I have not quit. I've always gone to 3 or 4 meetings a week since that time for almost 40 years. But I did not stay sober. I graduated from Georgetown, moved back home to South Lake Tahoe to start practicing dentistry, and I was going to meetings and got invited to a wedding down in Southern California, and I was on the plane down to the wedding. I had 3 years 1 month and 4 days. And the stewardess says, "Sir, would you like a double or a triple?" And then I looked at her and I said, "I don't drink, you know." And I thought this codependency of mine flared, and I thought, I just let that lady down. Um, so I got out of the plane, got a rental car, and drove straight to a liquor store. And as I was walking into the liquor store, there was a payphone. And I thought, I could call some of my friends and tell them I'm in LA and I'm in a front of a liquor store and I want a drink. And I thought, don't do that. So I walked in the liquor store, bought a 4-pack of Guinness Stout, and came back out. And I didn't have a bottle opener, so I had to walk back in the liquor store to get a church key. And I walked by that payphone again, and I thought, call somebody, tell them what you're up to. And I thought, no, I don't want to do that. I want to drink. So I went back out. I successfully hid it from my wife for quite some time, and then we went down to Puerto Vallarta, and I got stinking drunk, and my wife was screaming at me about divorce and lies and all the stuff. And I came to in the morning, and I was all beat up, cut, scraped, bruised, swollen, and I didn't have any money. And I thought, oh, I got rolled last night. Somebody took my wallet, took my money, and beat me up. And my wife was yelling at me, and I had a terrible hangover. And she said, "If you go back to AA, I'll go back to Al-Anon." There was two things about that surprised me. One, that she recommended I go back to AA, which I had already been going to. And two, that she'll go back to Al-Anon. I had no idea she went to Al-Anon. This was 1986. We were married in 79. She had been going to Al-Anon shortly after we got married, and I never knew because I was in the bars. I, you know, and so anyway, went back to AA and got a sponsor and started working the steps, got into service and did all that stuff. And, our life moved along. And then after 8 years of practice, I had to file bankruptcy and leave South Lake Tahoe and move down to the Central Valley of California. I couldn't make a living up there. There was just too much financial pressure. We had a 4-year drought. The t-shirt shops closed, the gas stations closed, and some of the dental practices and physicians' practices and a lot of other places closed. And so I filed bankruptcy, moved down to the Central Valley. Now, I took that bankruptcy as a personal failure. I said to myself, here's proof that you are no good, that you're a fraud, you're an imposter, and that you are a terrible dentist, a terrible business person, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I did not tell anybody in AA that I was feeling this way. That was a secret of mine. And moved down to the Central Valley and got very, very depressed, got suicidally depressed. I had a shotgun in my mouth. I got interrupted serendipitously. And when I realized that I was sitting there with a shotgun in my mouth, getting ready to pull the trigger, I called the suicide hotline. And believe it or not, they put me on hold. And a few minutes later, somebody answered the phone. I told them what was going on. They said, dial 911. And I said, no, I'm okay right now. They said, have somebody drive you to the psych ward down in Stockton, California. I said, no, I'm okay. I can drive myself there. So when my wife got home from work, I drove down to Stockton and signed up for 10 days of treatment. That was March of '94. And so I got out of the ECT, eventually wound up in ECT about 5-6 months later. And when I got out of the ECT, I was confused. I wanted to drink. I wanted to use. I was a mess. I was severely depressed. I'd been in the psych hospital 3 times for 3 10-day stints. And my father-in-law was dying of pancreatic cancer, irretractable pain. And he had some pain medications, and I stole them. Now, I didn't steal 1 or 2 of these pills, or a handful. I stole them all and started using. And when my wife caught me, she divorced me instantly, kicked me out, papers showed up the next day, and I was in the process of getting divorced. A couple of months later, I got her to agree to seeing a marriage counselor, therapist, and I'm sitting in the room waiting for her to show up with the therapist, and in walks my wife, and she looked at me and looked at the therapist and said to the therapist, I want you to make it very, very clear to Jim that we are getting divorced and I don't want him in my life anymore, and I'll pay for the hour, and walked out. And I thought we were there to reconcile, and she was there to make it painfully clear that we were getting a divorce. So shortly after that, I got in trouble with the dental board and California, and they put me in diversion and started monitoring me. And the ECT worked though, and I was clean again. And so things started moving back in the direction of recovery. And 3 years later, I was in a bar with a girl, and I decided I want to drink, and I picked up a bottle in '97 and went back out drinking while I was in diversion for the California Dental Program. And they were testing me and monitoring me, and I just found ways around it. And then in 2000, I got my third DUI, second in diversion, and the diversion board said, we're going to send you to treatment. And I said to the guy, you can't send me to treatment. I'm going to lose everything. And he said, Jim, you don't realize it, but you have already lost everything. So I showed up for treatment on September 26th of 2000, came to on September 27th of 2000, and I made a critical decision then that I was going to start telling the truth even if it made my situation worse. And I can tell you that was a good decision. I followed that decision very well ever since then. And, I went to treatment for 4 months, got out. Nobody wanted me in their life. I was $345,000 in debt, and I had to go live in a halfway house in Stockton, California. And I was severely depressed again. And I recognize now that I had thrown my life away, that I was a mess, that I was a failure, more proof that I was a failure. I was consumed with guilt and shame, and the future looked bleak. And I got a hold of a really bright guy for a sponsor, and I told him I was an atheist, and he said, well, I don't care. And the treatment center that I was in, the psychiatrist at the treatment center I was in echoed the same sentiment. He said to me, Jim, I don't care if you believe or not in AA, but you're going to have to do all the work if you want to get and stay sober. He was the first guy that gave me a pass as an atheist to recover in Alcoholics Anonymous. 18 years I'd been going to meetings, and no one had ever said anything like that to me. Now, to be fair, I'd never reached out to anybody, and I never told them I was an atheist, right? So, a significant part of my lack of recovery was on me for never disclosing that. Or failure to recover was on me because I'd never disclosed any of this stuff. And I didn't disclose I was depressed and I needed help. So I kept my mouth shut, and it damn near killed me. And that saying that we are as sick as our secrets certainly was true for me. Anyway, started the long path of recovery, and living in that halfway house, $7 a day it cost, and I had to go get a job refurbishing freezers and refrigerators at a used appliance store, $5 a piece. I had to clean out the insides, clean the metal racks, and then polish the refrigerator on the outside and plug it in and make sure it worked. And I was getting paid $5 a unit for that. I was had a borrowed bike. I would go to meetings where they'd serve donuts in the morning because I didn't have any money to eat. And that's how my recovery started. 18 years of being in AA, and I was living in a halfway house with a thoroughly kicked ass. So anyway, things started getting better. I got a job, I got a car. I got a car first, then a job. I mean, a job fixing teeth again. The dental board was monitoring me now heavily. Twice a week, I was getting urine tested. I was checking in 2 meetings a week with a meeting monitor that was reporting to the dental board. I had a work site monitor that was reporting to the dental board. I mean, the amount of scrutiny on me was overwhelming, and it was very expensive. And that lasted for 5 years. I got married to the wife I'm married to now. It took me 9.5 years to contact everybody on my 10th step list, and it took me 14 years and 8 months to pay everybody back. Now, there's a caveat with that when I say I paid everybody back, because I owed the IRS about $94,000. I hadn't filed or paid my taxes for 4 years. And so I got a hold of an attorney. We did an offer and compromise, and I owed them 34,000, which would have been what I would have paid them if I had been paying my taxes all along. But I got about $60,000 of that excused. So when I say I paid them all back, I really got about 60K of it excused. And so I paid them back too. And because I think it was because I did a thorough fourth and fifth step and eighth and ninth step that I started to get the promises that we talk about, the relief, the peace of mind, the I didn't have to look over my shoulder anymore because everything was being cleaned up or had been cleaned up, and I was free, you know. And the normal stuff in sobriety happened, 5 years sober. My mom passed away at 72, and that broke my heart. We had some grandkids, and my grandson passed away in 2013. He was 6 years old, 6 years and 8 days old. He died of a rare form of cancer. That was crushing. When I think of him, and I do frequently, it still hurts, you know. Um, I've gotten fired a few times. I've been written up at work countless times, because I took all those coping skills from my drinking days into my sobriety. And it took a long time to start fixing that stuff. It took a long time for me to become aware of my character defects. And I hate AA's nomenclature. I don't like it, but we all know what I'm talking about. Selfishness, self-centered. I want to rule the clinic, the dental clinic. I had a manager tell me once, Jim, you're trying to drive the bus from the back seat. And I thought, well, somebody needs to drive the goddamn bus because you sure as hell aren't. And, so I've had my run-ins with staff and been written up, and it's all been a learning process for me. And I'm a hell of a lot better than I was 40 years ago, a hell of a lot better than I was 22 years ago when this process started in earnest. And I'm still working on stuff. So last March, I started having hand and eye problems. In fact, I got scars on my hand and wrist right now from surgery I just recently had, and I got to have more eye surgery November 1st. And it started to become painfully obvious that my eyes and hands were giving out, and I should probably retire. Financially, it looked okay, so I did. I pulled the trigger after 39 years of practicing dentistry, and packed up everything and moved to Texas. The reason we moved here was because the cost of living here is dirt cheap. We bought a 1 acre lot with 2,200 square foot house on it for $260,000, and didn't have to finance very much of it. Now I have a nice retirement income with very little debt. And my wife and I have been traveling around and goofing off and having fun. And anyway, one of the things my sponsor did on that ninth step was kind of unique, I thought. He had me put myself at the top of the list, number one for amends, and my current wife, number two, at the top of the list. And I thought number one was odd that I should put myself there, but I didn't understand number two. And I said, why am I putting my current wife number two on my amends list? He says, because over the next decade or more, you'll have to change a lot of things, and you'll have to take a lot of money out of your income to pay for your debt in that new marriage, and your wife will suffer. And I thought that was kind of a unique approach, and I did that, and I made amends to my current wife after that by taking a nice trip to Dallas, Texas, so we could watch the Cowboys. That's her team. We had a nice trip, first class, everything, and just had a ball. Anyway, so I'm really struggling 2.5 years ago. I'm telling my sponsor that I hate AA. I am done with it. I can't stand going to these meetings anymore. They say the same shit every day. there's no new color, no flavor. I'm just bored out of my mind. And he encouraged me to start a secular meeting. And I tried to gather some friends together that were secular and try to get this thing off and rolling in Modesto, California, and I couldn't get it going. And then the pandemic hit, and boom, March 17th, I show up to my first meeting here, March 17th of 2020, and my life went from black and white recovery to full Technicolor. I just couldn't believe my ears. I am so very grateful to SRG. And of course, like many of you probably, I've stumbled into a lot of other secular meetings across the country, out of Toronto and Arizona, and there's a couple in California and Chicago. And I occasionally go to some of those other meetings, but my primary set of meetings is here in SRG, and I'm so grateful for this. Anyway, I can't think of anything else to say, so I'll end it here. And thank you, Bridget.